So good evening and welcome everyone. I'm so pleased you've joined the Friends of San Pedro Valley Park's Natural Sciences series. I'm Mila Stroganoff, Programs Director and Field Trips Director for the Friends and your host. We have Craig Nikitas with us tonight to enlighten us on the Cooper's Hawk. And I can assure you it will be a wonderful lecture. Craig Nikitas has been a regular guest on our natural history lecture series, and I'm very pleased indeed that he's joining us tonight. I will introduce him in just a moment. I will add that at the end of tonight's lecture, we will have a Q&A session. There will be an opportunity to ask questions and read some comments. So please write questions and comments in the chat section. I'm changing that from putting the questions in the Q&A. Let's put things in the chat because they come up on the side, so it's easier for us to read them. The lecture will be recorded and posted on our website in a couple of days. Our website is friendsofsanpedrovalleypark.org. Again, friendsofsanpedrovalleypark.org. Also, while I have your attention, consider becoming a member if you're not, and support the programming. I should mention that this lecture will segue into the beginner birding class lecture on Monday evening. I'm certain that we will have a great time with J.R. Blair leading the classes and field trips. This is the Friends' second beginning birding class. We have a very good chance of seeing a Cooper's Hawk or two, at least we hope so, on our Saturday field trips. We also hope to see other raptors, seabirds, waterfowl, and passerines. So that takes care of what we hope to see in a birding class on the Saturdays. Heavens, almost forgot. The upcoming webinar is with John Kipping, a naturalist, on Saturday, March 21st at 7 p.m. He is a returning speaker. Last time John spoke about gray whales. This time the title of his program is A Day in the Life of a Salmon. Sounds thrilling, doesn't it? Well, let's mark sends out the emails with a link. And now I have the great pleasure of introducing our speaker. Craig Nikitas, a retired urban planner, has been a wildlife volunteer working with raptors for over 50 years. In 2015, Craig founded Bay Raptor Rescue to provide a free service to aid predatory birds in distress. His career has included caring for captive animals at the Randall Museum, Steinhardt Aquarium, and the San Francisco Zoo, tending birds in rehab at Wild Care, trapping and banding migratory and dispersive birds of prey for 30 years with the Golden Gate Raptor Observatory, and presenting talks on the natural history of corvids, diurnal raptors, and owls at schools, colleges, universities, local naturalist groups, park associations, the Point Reyes Birding and Nature Festival, and to professional staff at the Lindsay Wildlife Experience, Curiosity, and the San Francisco and Oakland Zoos. So, Craig, take it away.
Thank you, Mila. It's a pleasure to be here and to have the opportunity to speak about one of the animals that is most near and dear to me. There's something very special about these birds. So let's take a deep dive, and hopefully this presentation will make you understand a little bit about the world of the Cooper's Hawk. I'm going to start sharing my screen here if I can push the right buttons in the right order, and we'll get started. Here we go. So I've entitled this Life Beyond the Forest because the Cooper's Hawk belongs to a family of birds that are called forest hawks. No hawk ever evolved to live in a city or a suburb, but these birds did evolve to live in the forest. And now that we've removed certain impediments and problems that they face, due to our way of life. They are burgeoning in population in the human areas of the planet as well as in the forests. Cooper's hawks are mid-sized raptors. They're a North American species, and they are. I'm going to show you now how to place them in the class of birds. Those of you who are taking the birding class might be interested in this taxonomy, which is the science of how to classify living things. So birds are in the class Aves. There are somewhere between 41 and 44 orders of birds. The taxonomy is still uncertain because there's ongoing DNA studies that are constantly reshaping, reforming, splitting, and lumping families of birds together. So the four North American families you see listed in the aqua-colored squares there, and the one we're interested in tonight is the Accipitriformes, which are the hawks and eagles and so forth. Ospreys are part of that. They're in their very own family. The Accipitridae are the hawks, eagles, and more commonly known raptors, including the forest hawks, which are called accipitrines. So the accipitrines in North America are represented by three species. The first is the small sharp-shinned hawk, which is in the genus Accipiter. The second is the middle-sized Cooper's hawk, which used to be an accipiter but was recently regrouped into a genus called Aster, as was the largest North American accipitrine, the goshawk. The name was changed from northern goshawk. Species were split, and the American goshawk is now in the Aster genus that it shares with the Cooper's hawk. So how do we recognize forest hawks? They have a distinctive shape. They have relatively short wings for their body length and a very, very long tail that enables them to accelerate quickly, to change direction fast in pursuit of flying animals like birds and bats. They have a very long tail that they use as a rudder that enables them to swoop through brush and bushes and tree branches. They're really quite exciting flyers. We'll show you an example of some of that now. They're also very stealthy. They can be difficult to see in the woods. They lurk in the branches, hide behind them, as you see here in this photo. And then they pounce on prey from those hidden perches really quickly. And as fast as that slide went by is how fast they fly. So I'm going to show that to you again in slow-mo so you could see what a Cooper's hawk in flight looks like. Here's an example of a sharp-shinned hawk hunting a Steller's jay. The jay is sitting there. You'll see it twitch as it sees the hawk now. And then it flies off being chased. And you saw how quickly the hawk was able to turn and how close it was to catching that Steller's jay. This is a very exciting video from Europe of a goshawk that was taken to show how they can maneuver through tight spaces in the forest. Here you see the hawk tilting on its side to get beside a tree trunk. I'm sorry, this is moving kind of jerky. It was a lot smoother earlier, but here you see it fold its wings to get through a triangle of trees, and there's a top view. Here you'll see it time its wing beats to fit between those two tree trunks. And we're seeing it in slow motion in this wonderful video, but that bird is flying at about 35 miles an hour. And here it tilts to the side and uses its feet to carom off a tree trunk to make a tight turn. Really remarkable flyers. That's what makes them successful at catching fast-moving prey. So they have speedy flight. Their shape helps them adapt. And then, like all raptors, they have a sharp hooked bill that enables them to kill, tear, and eat their prey. and sharp hooked talons to catch that prey and hold it. And most remarkably, they have incredibly sharp vision. We could do a whole program just on the special adaptations of their eyes and their brains and their whole visual process. But in short, they can have better focus than we do. They have way more receptor cells in their eyes, so they see much richer and more highly resolved images than we do. And especially, they see faster than we do because the refresh rate is 2 to 3 times faster than our own. That enables them to make those quick turns and get messages to their muscles to chase after those quick moving prey. So the natural history of Cooper's hawks is a body of knowledge about what they are, where they live, how they work, and we'll delve into some of that now. The age of this species is quite old. The fossil records show that Cooper's hawks were the first aster genus to establish themselves in North America. Fossils are between 500,000 and 1,000,000 years old. And that graphic, by the way, is just a representation of an old bird fossil. It's not an actual Cooper's hawk fossil. Unfortunately, I couldn't find one to show you. But this is how North America looked in the Pleistocene epoch when Cooper's hawks first were settling in North America. This particular one shows one of the many ice ages we've had since then. But this is the map with the ice all gone, so you can see their range. There's a migratory population shown in the orange area where they spend the summers and breed, and in the blue area where they migrate south for the northern hemisphere winter. The green band across the middle are the sedentary birds that don't migrate. They winter and they breed all in the same area. So let's talk about the habitats where they live. They evolved in deep forests, but they now live also in broken up smaller woodlots, in urban and suburban areas. They're often nesting near waterways. The urban birds don't have necessarily creeks or rivers or reliable sources of water, but they make do with what they can find. And this particular Cooper's hawk found a water bonanza as it's perched on a sprinkler. Cooling off on a hot day. So the territories they occupy are on average about a half mile in diameter. The nests are generally about 45 feet above ground. Normally, that's about 75% of the height of the tree trunk. So that means that they need trees that are about a minimum of 60 feet tall. The male does most of the nest building. He brings 75% of the twigs to the site, and we'll learn more about their nesting later. So talking about their populations, earlier in the last 2 centuries, these birds faced extinction here in the US. They were hunted, they were killed illegally. There were county agriculture departments that put bounties on them to pay people to bring them Cooper's hawks that they had killed because they were going after people's chickens and because they didn't fit the Victorian idea of being a good bird like a bluebird or a robin. They were evil birds that killed other birds. So Victorians thought they had the right to moralize about that and kill them. But they've made a huge rebound recently for a lot of reasons. One is that the banning of DDT in North America let them recover because DDT affected them the way it did pelicans and peregrine falcons and bald eagles by interfering with their egg laying and nesting cycles. So now their population is growing. There are probably more than 1 million Cooper's hawks in the US. Interesting that more males hatch than females because the males are smaller. It's harder for them to reach maturity without being predated. And they have a huge burden to carry in the nesting cycle of these birds that, if I'm able to get the computer to work, you'll see soon. In terms of mortality, 80% of these birds die in their first year. Only 20% of them make it past that first year to maturity. Sometimes there's just not enough prey base to support them. In urban areas, a lot of times they're getting diseased or poisoned prey. They eat a lot of city pigeons, which carry a respiratory disease that's fatal to them. Plus, we now have bird flu and West Nile virus. Probably predation accounts for the largest number of fatal ends to their lives in that first year. And sometimes there's just a failure to thrive. They're individuals. Some are more skilled at flying and hunting than others. So some of them just don't make it. The average overall longevity is 5 to 8 years for these birds. About 5% survive beyond 10 years of age. The longevity record is 20 years, which we know from banded birds. And if I can tell you a little personal story about this, I banded a Cooper's hawk in the Marin Headlands that lived to be 19 years old. And at age 19, it was shot in Mexico for stealing chickens. A year after that happened, a 20-year banded bird that was banded in Washington State was found dead in an Oregon forest. And that now holds the known longevity record for this species. The average male breeds at age 2 or 3. It has 3 years of nesting cycles, and then it dies. That's the statistical average for the male bird. The average male produces 9 young in its life, but the oldest 8% of that population that live beyond a year produce 24% of the Cooper's hawks that survive. So in terms of prey, birds comprise the vast majority of their diet. They've evolved to hunt other birds. Around here, pigeons, doves, woodpeckers, and songbirds, kingfishers, other birds comprise that diet. But the other 20% is largely rodents. And there are some times of the year or some locations where the percentage of rodents outweighs the percentage of birds that they catch and eat. Chipmunks and mice are favorites in the wild. Rats in urban habitats also are a component. And again, that's a danger to them because a lot of those rats may be carrying rodenticide. They also eat reptiles when available, lizards, small snakes. Their diet varies with season, habitat, and prey availability. They have several methods of hunting. Primarily, it's perch and pounce, where they lurk in the branches of a tree. They see prey and surprise attack it, ambush it, as it were. They also will fly low over bushes and shrubs, trying to flush out birds that they can then chase down. And they also hunt cursorily. This video is showing a Cooper's hawk in the bushes that is chasing a house sparrow, and then it emerges from the bushes with the sparrow in its talons. I've seen them try to get prey on the ground and overfly the prey, land next to it, and then run after it like a little velociraptor and leap on it from the ground. So how big are these birds? We said they were middle size, roughly the size of a crow. They have what's called reverse size dimorphism. As mammals, we're kind of prejudiced that males are generally larger than females, and that's true of many bird species. But in all North American raptors, except the burrowing owl, the females are larger than the males. And that's especially true with raptors that have a huge component of birds in their diet. Their lengths are 14 to 18 inches from beak tip to tail tip. The females are at the 18-inch end and the males are at the 14-inch end. Same with wingspans, 27 to 35 inches. The average male weight is a little under 10 ounces, and the average female weight in California is a little under 15 ounces. So you can see that she is 1.5 times his weight. And Western Cooper's hawks, west of the Rockies, are generally smaller in over the whole population than the eastern birds, which tend to be larger. So how do we ID their age? Well, Cooper's hawks have 2 age classes. Their first year and a month or two is spent as juveniles, then they molt into adult plumage. The ventral or bottom side view of them shows you the 2 plumage classes here. They almost look like 2 different species of birds. When people are first learning about this, they're surprised that this is the same species. The juvenile plumage is brown on the back. The underparts are generally white or buff background with brown vertical streaking. The adult plumage is a metallic gray on the back, a charcoal cap, and then rust colored horizontal streaking that can vary from bird to bird in density, so that some adult Cooper's hawks have like a solid rust colored breast. Others are more sparsely barred the way this one is. And then the dorsal side or backside, the juvenile bird, as I said, is brown. Notice they both have the banded tails with alternating light and dark tail bands. The adult dorsal plumage is gray with a dark charcoal cap. And this is an interesting slide because to get from juvenile to adult, they need to molt. They don't drop all their feathers at once and try to survive being totally naked. The feathers come out a few at a time in a specific order. The old, worn, faded brown feathers on that juvenile bird will drop out and be replaced, as you see, with the coverts and scapulars and the top tail feathers with beautiful gray adult plumage. So this transition happens from like mid-June to mid-September. Another interesting thing as they age is their eye color changes. The iris is a gray with a yellow tinge when they're first born. For the first 40 days, it has that gray tone. As they leave the nest and mature during their first year, the eye becomes a little more yellow and then starts tending toward orange as they age. By the time they start molting into adult plumage, the eye is becoming more pumpkin colored with little traces of yellow. And then the older adult birds get a deep red eye. The one in this photo is an adult male. The male's eyes always get deeper, darker red than the adult females. For some reason, the pigment doesn't accumulate in the iris of the females to the density that it does in the males. And then how do we tell the sexes apart? Well, we already mentioned the size difference and the huge difference in weight, but there are other ways too, other than getting them in hand and the correct scientific way of either DNA or measuring them to distinguish the sexes can sometimes be gotten around by carefully looking at the plumage. Notice the female on the left, her overall wing color and crown of her head are kind of a brownish warm tone, where the males are a darker, cooler gray tone. Notice the cheeks. The female cheek is kind of a brownish gray, a warm toned gray. The male cheek is a cool silvery gray. And in some birds, it's really easy to see this distinction. Some males do not show the silvery color. If you see the silvery color, you can be fairly certain it's a male. If you see the brown color, look for other clues as well as plumage to tell the males from the females, because some males do have warmer tones in the plumage. And then here you see the adult birds from the back or side. And this is very key. They have that dark black cap, as you see in this lateral photo, but the napes of their neck, I said dark black, but I should have said dark charcoal cap. The napes of their neck are light colored, and then they go back to the dark gray on the back and wings. So that in the adult bird, that light nape is an ID key that's very useful in the field. But to ID raptors is pretty complicated. They have juvenile and adult plumages. In some cases, there's a sexual dimorphism in the plumage. There's a huge variation among individuals. So you need to analyze the bird you're looking at systematically, and that comes with practice. And then these questions are designed to move to more specific answers so that by the end of it, maybe you can figure out what you're looking at. So for visual ID, these are the categories in order of preeminence. Body structure, the shape of the bird, the ratios of its proportions of wings and tail, body shape, head size, all of that that goes into body structure is the key thing to look at first, closely followed by plumage, but structure always trumps plumage. And then to a lesser extent, behavior and environment can help you make a decision about what you're seeing. So let's look at structure, the important one first. The length of the tail to the body length is incredibly important. If it has short wings relative to that body size, and if it has a long tail, it's an accipitrine. If it's perched, you can tell if it has short wings by where the wingtips hit. Let me go back to that slide. Sorry, it went through so fast. Look at the wingtips and how much space there is between the tail tip and the wingtip on that bird. This is a red-tailed hawk, and look at that wingtip. That wingtip reaches almost to the end of the tail. So you know that's not an accipiter. So overall size and head projection, size is hard to judge at a distance. Size is hard to judge in a photograph if there's nothing to give it scale. But in flight, look at this head projection. The Cooper's hawk head projects well in front of the leading edge of the wing. The sharp-shinned hawk doesn't have that much head projection. That gives you an idea of what we're talking about there with little dimensional lines. Big head projection coop, small head projection sharp-shinned. And then the overall size, like we said, a Cooper's hawk on average is like a good-sized crow. The sharp-shinned hawk is like a scrub jay in size. So another structural issue that helps us is head shape. Cooper's hawks have a large, blocky head that tends to look square in shape, whereas sharp-shinned hawks have a much smaller, more rounded head. So that's an important structural clue. Also, eye placement. If you draw a circle around the sharp-shinned head and then a circle around the eye will be centered in the head, just, as shown there with the dotted line. If you could draw a circle around a Cooper's hawk head, which is hard because they're flat on top there, but if you do it the same way we did with sharp-shinned, then draw a circle around the eye, you'll see that the eye is forward of the center line of that circle. The eye sits farther forward in the head of a Cooper's hawk than it does on a sharp-shinned. So if you're seeing a bird in profile, that can give you a clue that distinguishes them. And then this is an important one, bill placement and curvature. The bill of the hawk terminates in a kind of bulbous structure called a cere. It's yellow compared to the black melanin in the keratin of the bill. That cere is where the bird's nostrils are. And where that cere intersects with the feathers on the head If there's a little indentation, if it's concave, that's a trait of sharp-shinned hawks. If it's convex or flat and is a smooth line from the cere into the head, that's a Cooper's hawk trait. So that can also give you a clue if you can see those clearly. Also notice where the cere intersects with the feather on the Cooper's hawk. If you draw a line horizontally across the head, that intersection of the cere is above the eye. If you locate the same intersection on a sharp shin, that intersection falls within the circumference of the eye. Body shape is also a clue. It can be. You have to be careful. If it's cold and the bird is all fluffed up, the shape might be indistinct to you. If the bird's wet, if it's roused and the feathers are erected, all of that changes. But if the bird is relaxed, the feathers are tight, and you look at the body shape, Cooper's hawks tend to have kind of a football-shaped body where the wide part of the body is near the center of the torso. Sharpshins, on the other hand, tend to carry the broadest part of their torso in the upper chest near the shoulders and have a smaller waist. They can be seen to have a more V-shaped body. And that isn't always a clue, but if you can see it, take it. Legs and toes. Cooper's hawks have very, very stout toes and legs compared to sharp-shinned hawks. And again, you need to be careful here. The leg isn't a circle in section. It's kind of oblong, and seen from the front, it can look skinnier than seen from the side. But that aside, sharp-shinned hawks have little matchstick legs and very long, spidery toes compared to the proportions of Cooper's hawk feet. So that can also be a clue that'll help us ID the birds. Then there's another measurement. A lot of bird guides say, oh, Cooper's hawks have a rounded wedge-shaped tail. Sharp-shinned hawks have a square fan-shaped tail. But that can be really difficult to discern when the bird's in flight and the tail feathers are spread. The way scientists think about the difference in tails is something called delta tail, delta meaning difference, the difference in length between the outermost tail feather and the innermost center tail feathers. So you can see that the sharp-shinned tail on the right, all those 12 tail feathers that are nicely stacked there are all pretty much the same length. It's flat across there. Its delta tail is 0 or very small. The Cooper's hawk, if you look at the outermost tail, which when the feathers are folded stacks at the bottom of the 12 feathers, 6 on each side, that outer tail feather is very much shorter than the central tail feather. That huge delta tail means you're not looking at a sharp-shin. Now, female sharp-shins can show a little bit of a tail delta, but nothing like the proportions of a Cooper's hawk. So delta tail, keep that in mind if you're in a position to see the bird's tail feathers like that. And then we come to plumage. So the juvenile breast plumage for the Cooper's hawk, as I mentioned, generally the background is a cream color, off-white. When the bird first comes out of the nest, the background on the breast area is a tawny color, but that fades in the sunlight over the course of the weeks. And by the wintertime, a juvenile Cooper's hawk should have all cream-colored plumage with these very well-defined, long, so-called teardrop vertical streaks. They're fairly crisp, they're not blotchy, they're oblong, they're pretty well-defined. Juvenile Cooper's hawk. Juvenile sharp-shinned hawks can have streaking that's much more splotchy and wide and has a rufous tinge that's almost root beer colored. And if you see that in a juvenile accipitrine, you can bet it's a sharp-shin. However, to make things more complicated, some sharp-shins have Cooper's hawk-like brown streaking without that rufous color, but it's still very splotchy and overall not as generally crisp and well-defined as the Cooper's hawk streaking. As the bird molts into adult plumage, oh, sorry, let's look at the backsides of the juvenile birds first. They're pretty indistinguishable. A lot of juveniles of both species have these random white splotches that I call spangles. Um, it's all, in fact, all three accipitrine juveniles exhibit that. Uh, the adult sharp-shins can still display it. I don't recall ever seeing an adult Cooper's hawk that kept the spangling on the back. Um, so the topside plumage may not give you much of a clue in the juvenile bird. They're very similar. And then, as I was saying earlier, adult breast plumage, the vertical streaks get replaced by horizontal barring of a rust color. And again, that density varies. Here's adult Cooper's hawk on the left, the sharp-shinned on the right. That density can vary, but in general, it's rufous colored and it has a horizontal aspect rather than vertical streaking. And here are the backs, the gray of the adult bird. You can see the eye color is starting to change on both these birds. You can see here that indentation for the convex bill form that the sharp-shinned has. And then here you see the light nape of the adult Cooper's hawk with the dark crown. But the backs are generally the same gray color. Remember, if the nape is a cape, it's a sharp-shinned. If the crown is a cap, it's a Cooper's hawk. So are you guys ready to try some IDs here? Let's look at some examples. You can kind of work your way through these. The raptor photo will be there. We'll display this handy checklist to remind us of what to look at. And then ultimately the answer of the species will appear in that oval there. So let's try this out. Example number one. First question, is it an accipiter? Well, look, it has short wings. It has a long tail. It's an accipiter. What's its age? Well, it's gray and orange, so it's an adult. What's its size? Hard to tell in a photo, but this wrought iron thing that's holding up the bird feeder, you get I have a rough sense of those because we have those in our yard, and that tells me this bird is not going to be crow size. So its size, although uncertain, is probably small, like a sharp-shinned. What about its head? It's a little small rounded head. It's not big. It doesn't have a long neck. It's not blocky. What about its bill? It's a little hard to see against the background, but there is a definite concave thing going on there at the cere. What about its nape? It's a cape. Its feet, matchstick, spindly. Tail, not much of a delta tail. The feathers are nicely spread out enough where we can see all kinds of tail lengths there, and they're all pretty much the same. So the answer is sharp-shinned. We'll have to move a little quicker through these next ones. Is this bird an accipiter? Yes. Short wings, long tail. Does it have a big head? Yes, it does. How's its bill placement? It's a little hard from this angle, but you can see that smooth curve from the bill through the cere into the feathers of the forehead. What about its tail? Look at that. There's a huge delta tail there. The outer tail feathers on the bottom are much shorter than the center feathers in the middle. What about its legs? Those don't look like matchsticks. Those toes and claws look like they could hurt you. And so the answer is Cooper's hawk. Is this an accip? Yeah, short wings, long tail. Age, gray back, it's an adult. Size, unknown. Head, fairly big, blocky head. Bill looks like a pretty smooth transition to the forehead. The nape, yes, the nape is not a cape. There's a cap. The legs unknown, delta tail, a little hard to see, but if you can see that white terminal band, the ones at the edge that represent the outer tail feathers are shorter than the ones in the center representing the middle. So all of that tells us this is an adult Cooper's hawk. Is this an exip? Hard to tell. We can't see enough of it. It's a cropped photo. Its age, it's brown on the back. So, and light underneath, it is a juvenile. Its size, there's the bander's thumb with the arrow pointing for it. So unless the bander is like Andre the Giant, it's a small bird. Its head looks small and roundish. The bill has an indentation at the cere. It's concave. Nape doesn't apply because it's a juvenile bird. Can't see the legs, can't see the tail, but there are enough clues there to know that was a sharp-shin. Is this an accipiter? Short tail, short wings, long tail. Age, gray and orange. It's an adult. Size, unknown. It has a big head. It has stout looking legs. It has a big delta tail. Cooper's hawk. Hard to see much. This was taken on a very snowy day in Colorado, so there's not much light, but you can see the shape. You can get the body structure. Short wings, long tail. Yes, and it's an accip. Age, it's a little hard to see, but it looks like the breast has adult barring, so I would call it an adult. And there's a definite cape on the back of the head. So that's adult plumage. So it's an adult, hard to see the feet, but judging from those little skinny talons and the hallux in the back, it looks small and hard to see the tail, but I don't see a delta tail. But to me, the shape is diagnostic in that profile. It's a sharp-shin. And then look at this guy. He has a big head. He's got an orange breast. You might think, oh, an adult Cooper's hawk, but that would be a mistake because we need to go through this list. Is it an accipiter? Well, it has long wings and a short tail. It also has checkering on the folded wing feathers there. It also has a brown eye, and at no time in its life does any accipitrine in this continent have a brown eye. So what we're looking at here is a red-shouldered hawk. It would be easy in the field to mistake this for an adult Cooper's hawk if it was lurking around in the trees. They both have similar hunting styles. They both like to catch and eat birds. So even though this is a soaring hawk and not an accipitrine, there are some similarities. And in the field, with it moving around quickly and not getting a good look, it's possible to mistake one for the other. So this one, accipiter, yeah, short wings, long tail, you're not going to fool me again. Age, adult, size, looks small based on the metalwork, but don't really know. Small round head, got a cape on the nape. So it's pointing to sharp shin, little spidery toes. Can't really see much of the tail, but you can see from the edge to the center, and there's not a huge delta tail there. So this bird is a sharp shin. And then this guy, I'm not going to go through all the arrows and everything on the checklist. It's an accipiter. Oops, sorry. Let me catch up to where we're supposed to be. It's an accipiter, short wings, long tail. It's got a big head, a long neck. The bill transitions smoothly into the forehead, so it's convex. Bird's clearly a juvenile Cooper's hawk. So let's look at some in flight. Is it an accipiter? Yeah, long tail, shorter wings. Age, adult, it's got horizontal barring on the breast. And then here you see that line we talked about where there's not much head projection. Also, sharp-shins often fly with a crook in the carpal joint instead of a straight line across there. That also lessens the head projection. So the square tail with no delta all points to sharp-shinned hawk, adult. And then this flying bird, it's an accipiter. Look at that long tail. Its age is juvenile, brown streaking on the breast. Its size unknown, but it has a long projecting head. Notice this bird also has a bend at the carpal joint. You want to see Cooper's hawks flying with a straight leading edge. But I put this in here to remind you when you're looking at that, think about how the bird is flying. This bird is in a glide, so it has its wings slightly folded. It has a huge delta tail. So this is a Cooper's hawk. And then here's a bird in flight. This bird does have that straight leading edge that we want to see when they're gliding. It has a long head projection. It has a smooth bill into the forehead. It has varying feather lengths with the center ones longer. So this bird is a Cooper's hawk. And we could guess, assuming the color isn't messed up in the photo, from the warm tones of the cheek and the brownish tone of the cap, that it's a female. So here's a bird in flight. You can see it's an accipiter from that long tail. And this bird is soaring, meaning it's catching thermals and not having to flap to fly. And you can see that shape. It's diagnostic, huge head projection, straight line. That was a flying Cooper's hawk. And then this shows you the pattern in powered flight. It's too bad it's so herky-jerky, because the point of this is that when accipiters fly like that, they generally go flap, 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 and then they glide, flap, 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 glide, flap, 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 glide. And that video was meant to show it. I'm sorry, it isn't working well. So let's quickly run through the life cycle of these guys. They start out as these adorable, fluffy little balls of down feathers in the nest. The cycle begins with the male claiming a territory. The male arrives on the nesting grounds first, stakes out a territory, defends it, calls to defend the territory, fights other males off to defend the territory. And then when females come around, he'll try to woo them with display flights, courtship flights, where he flies up in the air and dives down and shows how agile and acrobatic he is. He'll also then, if things go well, try to woo her with food. As you can see here, the female chooses the male, and if we blow up that thing in her feet, it's a little pixelated, but he had given her some prey, which she is eating there. So that's a bit of feathery, bloody meat that she's dining on. If she accepts the food, then they begin building nests. I wanted to show you this before we get much farther into the life cycle, because it's an unusual, unexpected thing that happens, where a lot of times a juvenile female will mate before she's fully a year old with an adult male. It never goes the other way around. The male's so much smaller and with so much burden on them to provide food, stake the territory, build the nest, generally need 2 or 3 years to mature enough to successfully have a breeding cycle. But the juvenile females just jump right in. A lot of times you'll see this mismatch in age. You can also see in that smaller circle that she is molting into adult plumage. That said, if they like each other, again, food in the small circle there plays an important part. If he brings sticks to the nest that she likes, they'll bow to each other, and eventually copulation happens. This scale along the right side of the slide is meant to show the weeks passing by, with hatch day being 0. So 6 weeks before hatching, they may copulate. The nest, as I mentioned, is a stick nest. After copulation, she'll lay 3 to 4 eggs, sometimes as many as 5, but much more commonly 3 to 4, 1 egg every other day. She incubates them, as during the courtship period, when she doesn't leave the nest area for 30 days and he feeds her. During incubation, the same thing happens. She sits on those eggs. She protects them from squirrels and crows and raccoons or whoever else might want to eat those eggs. And he continues to provide all the food for her and feed himself. Just wanted to show you this. That's what the eggs look like. And this was in a field guide, which was kind of interesting. They said that, excuse me, the egg colors uh, green or pale blue with brown spots. Well, no, they're white. And the incubation period was off by about a week. And both sexes incubate, now primarily the female. And the nest is a platform of sticks. So it's important to do a lot of research. Don't just blindly accept what one field guide says. Sometimes misinformation just gets perpetuated. So while she is sitting on the eggs and he's doing all the hunting, periodically he comes to relieve her for 15 minutes or so, at least 3 or 4 times during the day, so she can fly around, stretch her wings and legs, bathe, drink, etc. And he'll sit on the eggs in that period. Then here she is coming back to the nest and relieving him of egg duty, and he's flying off to the right. So her break is over. Okay, there'll be a slight pause here while the colored wheel of death spins. So these are the nestlings. This is during the first week after they've hatched. She will sit on the nestlings for a couple of weeks. When they have down feathers, they can't keep themselves warm. She feeds them. He brings food for everybody. They'll continue to grow. The down gets replaced by functional feathers for flight and thermoregulation. By the time they're 3 weeks old, the kids can tear and eat their own food. So they can leave food there for them, and she can leave the nest and go hunt to help supply food for the growing babies and herself, as well as depending on the male. When they reach the brancher period, they start climbing around. They climb out of the nest. They're pretty good tree climbers if the tree has good bark. It doesn't work in eucalyptus trees or mulberry trees, but other trees, they can climb up the trunk, they explore the world, they flap around, the feathers continue to grow, and they start learning how to be crazed Cooper's hawks and get ready for life as an adult. Finally, at 4 to 5 weeks, they fledge, meaning their feathers are growing in, they can fly. They still depend on the parents for food for a while. And here you see the father at the nest, probably having just brought food for the fledgling daughter who's behind him. A little hard to see in the photo, but you can see the size dimorphism there. So the fledglings continue on. After about 4 or 5 weeks, when they first start leaving the nest, the parents basically abandon the nest. That's true of most birds. Usually the parents and the young fly off once the young have fledged. Cooper's hawk kids, however, hang around the nest for another 4 or 5 weeks. The parents are there less and less. The kids do their own hunting and feeding. They hang out with each other. They play around. They fight, but they do their own hunting and don't share their food. And then finally, when that period is over, about 10 weeks after hatching, they all take off and disperse and begin their new lives as adult or juvenile birds in the wild. So that's their life cycle. One thing I didn't mention in regard to there being the hatchier females mating with older male Cooper's hawks is it leaves a pool of floaters, young males who don't have territories and nests and families. And those guys are often the ones who get into trouble by like flying into buildings. And a lot of the rescues I do of Cooper's hawks are juvenile males. The service I founded provides aid to raptors in distress. 25% of our overall rescues are Cooper's hawks. And of that 25%, 75% of those have flown into buildings and can't find their way back out and need our help. So this is what happens. They fly in through a door. Once they get inside, these spaces are usually big volumes with high ceilings, and the bird tends to fly upward to try to get away. It doesn't want to fly down low to get under the door head, where all the people or vehicles or factory equipment or whatever they're in, all that noise and activity going on. So they need help to get inside. And this is a high school gymnasium. This is what it's like for the bird to be in there. You can see with those clear story windows up high, it likes to hang up where the light is, and it doesn't want anything to do with the floor level where all the high school kids are playing basketball and running and shouting. So quickly, I thought I'd run through just to give you a sense of the flavor of all the places and buildings and sites from which we've removed Cooper's hawks, from light wells of buildings to factories to parking structures, self storage facilities, a brick house, library, out on the street, in a tractor store in Brentwood, ferry building, San Francisco, a brewery on Alameda Island, San Francisco High School, an airport hangar, all these huge spaces that they fly into and can't get out, more parking, the courtyard of a hotel that had that awful exclusionary netting that always gets holes in it. Pigeons go through the holes, hawks go through the holes after the pigeons and get stuck there. Factories, batting cages are big, an elementary school. And lastly, this guy who was in a motorcycle parts warehouse. And I want to finish with him because this guy exemplifies the spirit of Cooper's hawks. I hold their legs after they're trapped to control them, but this guy only had one leg. His whole right foot below the feathered part of the leg was missing. It was healed. It's an old injury. His health was good. His body condition and weight were robust. So he was surviving as a juvenile bird, missing a foot. And that kind of spirit is something I admire in these guys. This one male was chasing a bird through a woven wire fence. The little bird got through. He didn't get all the way through.
Wow.
Okay. And then this is what it's all about, getting the birds fit again. That was supposed to be a video, but it didn't play. Trust me, it was exciting to watch that Cooper's hawk fly out of the carrier. You can take a screenshot of this because I'm running out of time of ways that you can help raptors. The things in magenta are things you can avoid doing that will impact birds negatively. Take a screenshot or email me and I'll send you a brochure on this. And then likewise, here's a list of other organizations besides ours that help birds. So this is the end of it. I'm glad you're here, and I thank you for your interest in wild birds. And you got any questions?
Oh, so that was terrific. Okay, well, I'm back, and we'll see. I got something in Q&A. That was a remarkable presentation. Maybe you'll be able to go back a few slides and show us the contacts and things so that we
Okay.
can. I didn't get my
Can
camera
we do
ready.
questions first and then I'll put it
Yeah,
up? Okay.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
So
So,
I'm gonna depend on you, Mila, to select questions, or do you want me to just winnow through these and take them?
well,
Okay,
let's see.
screen black. Bandwidth, loss. It's
So
coming.
do you have a specific phone number you recommend in terms of assistance?
Depends
Or,
what the issue is and where.
oh, okay.
There's no simple answer to that. Um,
So, okay. So that screenshot, yeah.
so far, it's mostly descriptions of uh, the issues, and I apologize for that.
And yes,
But,
the
okay,
quiz was
what is
great.
the success? What is the success rate of hunting with a Cooper's Hawk in a percentage amount? Really good question. I'm going to intuit an answer because I don't have accurate statistics, but I would guess that they're successful about 1 out of 4 or 1 out of 5 times. And that's a pure guess based on 50 years of being around them and guessing.
So they have to expend quite a bit of energy to get some food.
Yeah, they do. Um, so it's gratifying to see that somebody liked the little quiz and they feel better about ID skills now.
Yeah, that was fun. That was really very helpful.
Hey, I'm going to ask myself a question and answer it. Two questions. One is, why did the data I present on longevity skew almost entirely toward males? And the answer to that is this. Most of the studies that are done on longevity are done by scientists who band nesting pairs. They know the bird is going to be at the nest and they can observe them. And it turns out that the males have great nest fidelity. Every year while they're alive, they come back to the same successful nest site, defend it, try to attract a female. Sometimes it's the female they were with last year, sometimes it's a different female. But if it's nesting season and band number 5B712 doesn't come back to the nest, the male, it's because he's dead. So
Ah.
then they know how long the male lived. If the female doesn't come back to the nest the next year, what happened? She could be at a nest a mile away. She could have died. She could be at a nest 5 miles away. So there's no way to track the females doing this research at the nests from year to year. That's why that longevity data skewed toward males because of that nest fidelity. Okay.
Hmm.
And the second question I'm going to ask myself is, why do you think it's necessary to get 2 or 3 or 4 ID points to distinguish a sharp-shin from a Cooper's Hawk? And the answer is, the photos I showed you were chosen because they exemplify those differences. But the fact is, in the real world, a big female sharp-shin can have some Cooper's Hawk-like characteristics. A delicate male Cooper's Hawk can have some sharp-shin-like characteristics. The delicate male Cooper's Hawk could have a big delta tail and a light nape and a dark cap. And you look at his toes, and his toes look like they belonged on a sharp-shin. And it can be confusing. So get 2 or 3 ID points, and that points you at the right direction because all of these characteristics are a Klein. They're extreme examples, they're minuscule examples, and everything in between. So if you want to get more certain, get more, more ID points that stack up on one side of the balance scale to point in the right direction.
Hmm.
So I don't have any more questions of myself. Um, in, in that case, if no one else has new questions. Oh, actually, I saw somebody ask that question I just answered about the
So,
why the male data. So thank you to the person who asked that.
and then
Um,
JR is saying, thank you so much.
yeah,
The
I didn't see it.
presentation is a terrific insight into the potential pitfalls of a tricky ID pair of species. Great for my upcoming class.
All
So
right. Well,
there, thumbs up.
okay. Well, again, thank you all for being here. It was a pleasure. You can tell I'm passionate about these birds and I enjoyed talking about them.
Yes, and we certainly all very much enjoyed it. pitfalls and all, but that happened on our side and it happened on your side today. So we ironed it all out.
Yeah, it's really too bad the presentation graphics didn't present more smoothly, but I don't know what the issue is.
Well, as I say, I always say IT is great when it works, and when it doesn't, it's hair raising.
I think this may mean I need a new computer too. This one's probably got a full memory and a creaky old hard drive. It's a pretty old computer. I'm going to get myself a new one for next time.
Oh, that sounds like a good idea. Yeah, sure. Why not? Go
All
out
right.
shopping.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you all.
Okay, Craig. Thank you so much. All right. Until next time.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right, folks. So I think we're done. It seems like we've all had a tremendously edifying lecture. Hopefully we can tell things apart a little better. So we'll see you back in, what is it?
It'll be March.
In March. Yeah, right. It's the very, very end of February today. It's unbelievable. Tomorrow's March. So we'll see you in March. And I hope we'll be able to, share a wonderful day in the life of a salmon. Okay. Take care. And until then, bye-bye.